The Nintendo Switch turns 5 today, and where the heck did time even go? But also, I've had such a great time with this little console, and if you are looking for a video to help you decide if it's finally time for you to pick one up, I'll just tell you now, pause the video, go and buy a Switch right now, but then still come back and hang out with me because I would really appreciate you. But also I thought it would be fun today to have a nice little sit down and share with you a little bit about my last few years with the Nintendo Switch and why it is such a special console for me. You guys also really enjoyed my first and only Switch collection video on this channel, so I might do an updated one sometime this year as well, but in the meantime I will share with you some of my favorite consoles that I've had through the years. So I remember when the Nintendo Switch was first announced, and also following their last home console, which was the Wii U, and it didn't exactly do the greatest, to put it lightly. I was definitely apprehensive about Nintendo's then new baby. Plus I've never seen anything like it before, and you know, being comfortable with what you know and all of that. It's a hybrid console that transforms from a handheld portable device to a home console with detachable controllers. I remember thinking it was a little bit bizarre the first time that I heard about it, but then eventually obviously came around to it, and I'm so glad. I've been a fan of Nintendo handhelds ever since my very first one, which was the Game Boy Advance SP, but I've never actually owned any of their home consoles during this time. First of all, it was quite expensive when I still lived in the Philippines, but also I loved the idea of a handheld console because I can play anywhere and everywhere and anytime, and I did. And I've just fallen in love with portable gaming ever since, you know, so I've never really known what I was missing with the N64 or the GameCube. My family did eventually own the Wii when we moved to Canada, and I did love it, but I still didn't spend as much time on it, not like my Nintendo handhelds. I owned the white DS Lite, a black DSi, and then eventually the 3DS line of systems, which I just recently made a video about. Fast forward to March 2017, the Nintendo Switch was finally released. I remember it was also quite hard to get a hold of at the time, but again, it didn't really bother me much because I wasn't in a rush to pick one up. I was also hoping then that they would come out with a dedicated handheld version, which we now know to be the Switch Lite, but just because I was coming from the 3DS line of system and I was so deep in the 3DS library, again, I love handheld gaming, I'm probably going to say that a few more times in this video, but I didn't feel the need for the Switch part of the Switch. Then a year or so later, rumors started coming up of Animal Crossing coming to Nintendo's latest handheld, and of course that is what sold me to the device, because at the time I was really obsessed with Animal Crossing New Leaf for the Nintendo 3DS, and that game was like 7+ years or something years old by that point, so I was dying to try out a brand new Animal Crossing game. So I finally caved in and bought myself the gray V1 Switch. This one was the one that I skinned on the channel with the Zelda skin, and probably is due for another makeover soon, but I do love how it looks with the Skyward Sword Joy-Con. This is one of my favorite pairs that I own, but I finally got a Switch, and well, the rest is history. Of course, Animal Crossing didn't end up coming out for another 2 years, but I didn't know that then. In the meantime, I slowly became obsessed with my newest toy. I really thought that the 3DS brought me back into the world of gaming after not being in the hobby for a few years, but the Nintendo Switch solidified it in a completely different way. My first few games I remember being Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Mario Kart, Super Smash Brothers. I think I had Splatoon as well. Definitely heavy hitters, and some titles that I recommend to new Switch owners or gamers of all kinds to this day. They were and are the absolute staples for Switch owners. I thought that they did a really great job showcasing what the Nintendo Switch can do, and of course coming from the 3DS as well just before the Switch, it was night and day. I remember being so blown away, and also the cherry on top being that it switches from a handheld to a home console, of course. And even though I do still mostly play it on handheld mode to this day, I do love having the option of being able to to dock it now on a larger screen depending on the mood, or maybe when I'm playing multiplayer with family, or even just capturing game footage for the channel. Another year passes, and in September 2019 we finally got the Switch that remember I said earlier I was actually hoping to get, and that is the Switch Lite, the Nintendo Switch that doesn't switch. Here is a Switch Lite which I've reshelled. I thought that it looked super sleek, being all black with a black screen and then just the nice little touch of the colorful, very reminiscent of the Super Famicom. And if you're new to my channel, you might not know that I actually love customizing my consoles, and this is just one of the fun mods that I have done with the Nintendo Switch. And a side note, but it is another reason why I love the Nintendo Switch, because of all the customization options. Anyway, we got the Switch Lite, and I recall when this was first announced that it was very polarizing. There was a lot of people confused why Nintendo would release a Switch that doesn't switch, but it is called a Lite after all, and it made sense. You know, Nintendo had always been the front runner for handheld systems in gaming, and with the 3DS line exiting, they needed another dedicated handheld that could play their latest and greatest games, hence the Switch Lite. It just didn't make sense to create a brand new handheld line, especially with the Switch selling like crazy. I love the Switch Lite, I really do, and the only thing that I might miss on it once in a while is the HD rumble. I've talked about in the channel before how I really enjoy that in game, and certain games do rely on that mechanic as well, but specifically this black one that I reshelled is one of my everyday carries. Oh my gosh, there's dog hair on it, how embarrassing. Yeah, I love carrying around my Switch Lite. It just fits so well in my smaller purses as well, and you know, like I've said a million times in this video already, she's a handheld gaming fan. So sure, it's not for everybody, but the Lite is perfect for me, in my opinion. Another year passes again, and then we get the V2 Nintendo Switch. Mine is right behind us. It's the Animal Crossing version. Obviously, would you expect anything less from me? And along with its release was also the game that I got my first Nintendo Switch originally for, which was Animal Crossing New Horizons. Just when I didn't think I can fall in love with my Switch more, I just so adore the Animal Crossing colorway that they did. The mint green and the sky blue Joy-Con paired with the sandy, beachy dock that has Timmy and Tommy on it. I mean, perfection. It is so precious, and I guess they did improve the battery life on it as well. It didn't affect me too much in my own experience. I wouldn't have gotten a V2 Switch if it weren't for the Animal Crossing edition. I know I am a huge sucker. It's okay, I'm aware, but I thought it was worth it because I played so much Animal Crossing on this thing. And may I also say how badly I and many people around the world needed this game when it came out because of all of the things happening in the world at that time. So the Animal Crossing V2 Switch really means a lot to me because of this reason as well, besides it being Animal Crossing themed already, of course. In between all of this, pretty much since the Nintendo Switch's release, there had been rumors and leaks of the Nintendo Switch Pro coming. People wanted a bigger, better, badder Nintendo Switch system that would compete more with the Xbox and the PlayStation, and listen, we are accepting of all consoles on this channel. I love playing on all of them, including PC, depending on the mood and also depending on what game I'm after. But for me, Nintendo games have never been about the super crazy graphics and super crazy performance, and I know some people might think that that is called settling, but it's not it for me. Nintendo, I think, has always done their own thing and kind of paved their own way for their own consoles and their own exclusive games. Nintendo has always been and probably will always be my comfort console. I go to Nintendo for all the games that just truly brings me so much joy. Pokemon, of course, I've mentioned a few times on this channel. Zelda games, Kirby, the one that is coming out, oh my goodness. Of course, Super Mario games, Animal Crossing. Need I say more? Of course, let's also not forget to mention all the beautiful, cozy indie games that we love to play around here. Just recently, at the time of filming this video, there was actually another leak of a supposed Switch 2 coming out. Because the Switch is 5 years old, it is inevitable that it will eventually come to the end of its life cycle as well. And I think the Switch Pro or the Switch 2 or whatever it is will come when it comes, as it does with a next-gen console or just a console revision. I don't personally like to look into the rumors or get excited about news that haven't been confirmed officially. I kind of just enjoy things as they come, because really I've had a lot of fun with the Switch as it is. As for the improved performance, sure, of course it will make the Switch even better than it already is. But just again, speaking from my own personal experience, which is the only thing I can talk about, I'm not drawn to games for the crazy high graphics or the ultra high performance. I still love them, don't get me wrong, but what hooks me in a game is a captivating story, a really fun gameplay, and whatever just makes me genuinely have fun at the moment when I'm playing a game. And that is what Nintendo games are for me. Gaming is my me time thing, and I love to talk a lot about how it is a self-care activity for me as well. And so just play what makes you happy, you know? We fast forward to just last year in October, the Switch Pro that we got was actually just a revision, which is the Nintendo Switch OLED. This is my OLED upside down. And give it a little wipe because this is my everyday Nintendo Switch right now, so it's hard to keep fingerprints off of it. But here's my OLED Switch. I have a different pair of Joy-Con on it. I've talked about this one before, but I really like it because it's got a curve to it. It's like Joy-Con but also built-in grips, and it keeps my Nintendo Switch very low profile when I'm taking it around with me, so I adore it for that. So not quite the Switch Pro, but I think this is probably, my best guess is the last revision that we'll get for the current gen Nintendo Switch line. I did make a couple videos on this already, so if you want more of my thoughts on that, I'll have it linked in the card somewhere. I won't bore you with even more rants than this video already has. I do really love it for all the upgrades that it came with. Again, as a handheld player, I think that I'm really able to take advantage of most of the upgrades. The bigger, better, almost bezel-less screen. The colors are so vibrant and punchy and sharp, and you can really tell the size difference, especially when you're holding it. The upgraded speakers are very noticeable as well, and as for the battery life, it's supposed to be comparable to the V2 Switch, but I feel like this one I rarely have to charge because I do carry it around with me, and I never have to use like my portable batteries whenever I'm on the go. It just has more than enough until I get home and, you know, I can plug it and charge it. I appreciate the new kickstand as well, and I've actually already had some really great use out of it. And even just the finish of the body itself, it is different from the original V1 and V2 Switch. It just feels more sturdy, and paired with the white Joy-Con, I know I don't have it on right now, but paired with the white Joy-Con and the white dock, it just feels much more like a premium console, and maybe even a bit more mature. I think I've mentioned that in my previous videos, like I've said before as well. It's like the Switch grew up and had a glow up. That's what it feels like when using my Nintendo Switch OLED. And oh my goodness, I've only even just brushed on the game library very, very quickly, but at this point, 5 years in, there's a lot of games. Lots and lots of Switch exclusives, new titles, or games that have never been on the Switch before and are being brought over to the Switch. Lots of old favorites in the Nintendo line that are also being brought over, or even games that were previously only exclusive to Japan or other regions finally being brought over to the West to be played on the Nintendo Switch. I mean, the Switch announcements for 2022 alone, if you're just coming into owning a Nintendo Switch, you are in for a treat. There's a giant backlog of games that I don't think you'll ever have enough time to go through, but this year's upcoming releases, I would have to say, is probably some of the very best I've ever seen. So really, really exciting time to be a Nintendo Switch owner for sure. So when did you get your first Nintendo Switch console? Have you owned it since the release day, or are you just coming into owning a Switch? Feel free to share your favorite games or maybe even a fun memory about owning the device. And if you're just getting it, welcome to this beautiful community. I really hope you'll stay a while and have fun with your time here. I hope you also enjoyed my rambles about why I love this little console and the time that I've spent with it so far. Thank you so much for watching. As always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.